I think it started really early in my life when I experienced my first racial incident in first grade, actually. We were playing on the playground, and there was this one game where you go bubble gum in a ditch, and I went to go join the game, and this one kid was like, "This game isn't for your color," and that just really made me realize like just how different I was from people. And then especially growing up as an African American in predominantly white areas, and especially in a predominantly white sport of swimming, I always kind of stood out, and I would just experience different microaggressions and micro insults, and I just felt that it was important to educate others about it. And so through this, that caused me to find a community of people who are like me, who want to educate others about the importance of equality.
Yeah, I think education is huge role, and I think education is such an important role in attaining social justice and racial justice that's why we're seeing such a massive pushback trying to censor what is being taught in the classrooms. You know, whether it's groups like Moms for Liberty or other of these organizations across the United States that are trying to prevent the teaching of, classes like AP African American Studies, or trying to prevent the teaching of so-called controversial topics in the classroom. There's a reason people want to prevent those topics in the classroom. They a lot of times use the idea like, it makes my white child feel bad in class. And it's like, well, then you're dismissing all the students of color who have had to deal with these traumas year over year for centuries in this country, and just saying, well, no, we can't talk about it because it's going to maybe make my white student feel guilty. That's not the approach that you can take. In order to deal with these issues, and again, progress as a country, we have to have conversations. And the best place for us to have those conversations are in safe classroom settings, where students can share their thoughts, where they could share their experiences, where you can be opened up to different perspectives. And James Baldwin had this quote, where he said, "When Patrick Henry says, 'Give me liberty or give me death,' the whole white world stands up and celebrates and applauds. But when a black person says the exact same thing, word for word, they are demonized in the media, they are demonized by politicians, and everything is done to make that person a bad example." And so I think, again, the characterization today is just the idea of anybody who's trying to more forcefully push back against systems of oppression. Well, because those systems of oppression control large parts of the media, control large parts of political power structures in our country, they try to present, protests today that may be more direct, but are still peaceful as violent actions. One of the big things that Martin Luther King Jr. advocates is the idea of civil disobedience, that if a law is unjust, then you are in your right to kind of break that law as a form of protest. But in terms of Dr. King's kind of message going forward, too, in his influence, I think one of the big things is I go back to his 1966 speech he gave at Illinois Wesleyan University. And one of the things he kind of gets into this speech is the concept of time. And he actually brings this up in other speeches later too at Stanford University. But his concept is that time is neutral. And a lot of times people think that it is time that brings progress. Don't worry, it'll get better over time. And his argument is time is neutral. Time doesn't do anything. It's what we do with that time that determines if we're going to go forward as a country or backwards. And what he argues is, sadly, in the history of the United States, the forces of evil have been more productive with how they use their time than the forces of good. And so his message is essentially, if we want to progress as a country, we can't be stagnant. We need to be active players in being the change that we want to seek. And in big part of that, it is we need to take positive actions to bring positive change.